I'd like to say something about alumni and what we might expect in terms of giving. I think, of course, Corinne's right, they do a lot. And it was that unfortunate comment by the current chair of the board about a bad investment that indeed provoked so much energy and activism that we see in this room today. I guess what he was looking at was the fact that only 20% of the alumni were giving in that particular year. But if you go back in time, a higher percentage of alumni used to give 10 years ago. So though we might be very enthusiastic about the rate of alumni participation here tonight, there is no doubt that many alumni are disaffected from the institution, and that disaffection has grown over time. We need to find out why that is. I suspect, in part, it's because we moved to a single pot accounting, where so many particular preserved funds for particular things that alumni were interested in was swallowed up. It was swallowed up because of the building. The building became the hole that not only put us into debt, but actually disaffected a large number of alumni who don't even know that if they give money to this place today, it can go to particular funds, to particular things, to support, let's say, you know, a very small program. Is that known about? No. Is it advertised? No, it isn't.
Is it trusted? No, but that, I mean, you know, is it trusted? I mean, you know, this is the crux of it. I mean, when I mentioned, you know, credit and credibility, and I've talked about it here before, the deficit and the massive expansion of it is a direct expression of a wavering from mission. In my view, they map each other, they mirror each other. Which is why I have no interest in guillotine, I have no interest in pointing fingers. I have an interest in the fact that we have to set the record straight about what our mission is and what it's been for a very long time. And it is, as I said before, it is about ethics and imagination and developing a social contract out of different disciplines, out of different ways of asking questions. And when that became, you know, I remember I was blessed to be John Haydock's Associate Dean, and I remember when things were really great, he would say, all we have to do is guard the door. And he meant to keep it open to the students and to keep it closed. I remember he said this to me one day, he said, and to keep it closed from those who will come to take a bite, to make their own egos. There's a lot of them in this town who want to make their egos, and that's not what we're here for. We're here to keep the door open for the students, and we got to keep those out. And that's exactly what happened.
I'm Tom McKelly. I was asked by John Shedd in January to be the convener of the Revenue Task Force. And so I thought I would just make a few statements to add some texture to the announcement, dispel a little bit of the smoke that's been generated. One of the few things that rang true for me in Richard Perez-Pena's article was the word agonizing, because it was an agonizing 15-week process. We met week after week after week and tried to hash out the problem as best we could. And the first thing that we took off the table was tuition. Why? Not only because we had passionate people against it, such as Sarah on the panel, but also because it was unimaginative. We were looking for something that would work, but it would also make Cooper a more exciting place and position Cooper better for the 21st century. There are a few factual things I just want to discuss, and I don't want to get into the ethics of it. It's not my pay grade. But in terms of the master's programs, we have to remember that we do charge tuition for educational programs now. It's called continuing education. And the vast majority of the programs that we discussed in the Revenue Task Force was an expansion of continuing education, non-degree programs, such as professional degrees, professional programs for career advancement, such as certificate programs, which we talked about. I think Maren might remember the committee we were on in the 1990s that discussed professionalizing continuing ed and awarding certificates through that. And so what I wanted to just discuss briefly is that the master's programs are not only about 25% of what we consider as a, quote, revenue-generating idea, but they are also entirely in the hands of the deans and the faculties of those schools. They have, we were loath to make any kind of curricular recommendation. We knew that it was not our place, and so that is where those decisions are going to go. And it is well within the purview of the recommendations that say the art school says, we don't want an MFA program. It's just not going to work in the space we have. It may happen. So I just want to let all of you know that is part of the background. The other thing you should know about the Revenue Task Force is that it was entirely Cooper-based. There wasn't a single person on that task force that wasn't an alumnus, wasn't a teacher, a student, or administrator, and there was only 2 administrators. So if anyone has a question with the panel about the process, I'd be happy to discuss it, but I just wanted to make those comments.
Do you have a question for the panel as well?
No, I think the panel's great. I admire the passion. I don't agree with everything you said, but you've all been very eloquent.
Can I ask you a question about something you just said about the fact that we charge for continuing education programs? Is that truly a revenue generator? Because I've always thought of it more as like a community number where people are invited into this special institution to continue their own education program, what I thought was a pretty important stuff. So to cite that as a revenue builder, can you expand on that?
Yes, it breaks even. Kind of. And so right now, I mean, so it is considered a public programming. It is considered public programming. And what we are attempting to do is ramp that up in ways that will not impinge on Cooper's overall bachelor's programs. It's in a way that would kind of keep clear of that. Because
Continuing ed by what? Like making it more profitable by making it more expensive, so it's no
more offerings, more offerings.
Put in here a little bit, and the purpose of the panel was to discuss the community solutions, and I invited the Revenue Task Force to have a similar forum where we could have direct questions to the Revenue Task Force.
Thank you.
Sorry. I have a question for Sangu specifically. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, and I think it also follows in with Hayduk's quote about the biters. I was really struck in a meeting with you when you had a, I think, clarifying insight about the amateur program that you were doing research on, and how using these fee systems that were in Cooper's history as a precedent for charging tuition as a way of guaranteeing access to education for the poor. You had a contrary opinion to that I thought was quite insightful. I was wondering if you could share that with everyone, because I thought that was really important. Thank you.
Sure. I think the word access has been thrown around a lot, the word access. And I know in the reinvention strategy you mentioned access, meaning with those with means could provide access to those without. I think implying that if we did have a tuition-based model where some students were paying tuition that could support financial aid packages for those who couldn't, as sort of a level playing field. I think many people have argued what makes Cooper Union a level playing field is this notion of meritocracy, getting in on the same merits, working on the same merits, being judged on the same merits. And when you go back to the reports about this amateur class, I guess, and Peter can correct me as well, the Female School of Design preceded Cooper Union. So when Cooper Union incorporated it, it found a way. The benevolent ladies who were the patrons of the school made their case to the Board of Trustees that they should not be excluded. So it was a way of allowing these wealthy patrons to take classes. So I think in the early days, this notion of a paying class was to allow those with means, not necessarily to provide access to those without. I think Cooper Union was providing that access. I think this was, I guess the question is access to who? And sorry if I butchered that.
I did want to say something, not necessarily directly to that, but there's one point that seems to be emerging that I think is worth mentioning, that there's two very opposing strategies. There's the strategy that the administration is putting forward, which is an expansionist strategy, meaning that through growth, you'll be able to somehow sustain the donut or the whole. That reflects a worldview that's popular. Go global. There's an alternative worldview that says go local. And I think that it's not necessarily a consensus, but something that's emerging through these discussions is that there's a lot of power in cultivating what essentially the institution is, which is a unique New York City institution. That the moment we start thinking in terms of how we can be educating people across the globe while not being able to maintain our one-block radius is not only presumptuous, it's dangerous.
The idea that the other side of that also needs to be cared for in its manner.
Oh, and I hope that what I said wasn't an isolationist strategy. It just means that we have, New York City has needs here directly. We can be involved in the city and be a unique special institution right here and solve the needs that are closest to us. It's a lateral move, and I don't mean to be exclusionary. We can certainly include students from abroad, but we don't, it's the difference between cultivating what we have right here in order to generate an identity for the school that is a bit more clear than it is right now, because we have a problem between what the administration sees as the way forward and maybe what the students and some of the faculty and alumni see as the way forward.
Just very quickly, I think as I tried to say earlier, not very articulately, that the debt issue in, nationally in education, the disaster in the public school system in lower education, all of these are part of this story. They're not separate. This isn't, we're not in a vacuum outside of that. And so I would just add one more thing, that, Manhattan County is the county in the United States with the largest disparity in incomes. And you should know, we're not talking about like the top 1% or 5%. The top 20% in Manhattan makes $375,000 a year. 20, I didn't say 1% or 2%, 20. The bottom 20, not the bottom 1, 20, makes $9,000 a year. That's our county, that's our neighborhood, that's Manhattan. And that's where this school was built. And it was built by Peter Cooper for a reason, because it was not as extreme, but there were extremes when he built it. So we have a huge amount of work to do here, a huge amount of work to do in Manhattan County.
If Jamshed, if I could address a question directly to you, and this isn't an attack or criticism, this is me wanting to work with you and trying to get the community to work with you and get you to work with us. Is there anything that you want us to do to help get the message out? Is there anything that we can do to help with your sales pitch? When we hear you talk about our budget woes, and when we hear Mark Epstein blame the alumni, we don't see the passion communicated by the image of Jesse Cruiser atop the statue of Peter Cooper. Is the answer do nothing? Well, we're Cooper Union, so answer again. Is the answer just donate? Well, many of us donate already and we'll keep donating, so?
Thank you, Andrew. No, I don't think the answer is just donate. I guess your first question was, what would I ask
Us to do.
Well, Oh, sorry. Since before I began in July, a few times that I came down to meet some people, and then starting in July when I did come, I invited people into small group discussions in my office. And I think we've had some extraordinary discussions, and then when it became clear just the scope of the financial challenges, in my communications I put out URLs people could click on where alumni, parents, students, faculty, and staff could sign up for small group discussions, and we've had scores and scores and scores of them. Many of them conference calls. People have called in from all over. I think those who've been at those have found them to be tremendous opportunities for two-way communication, for me to hear about the experience of those who've been at Cooper for a long time and know it, and for me to learn about Cooper, but also for me to lay out some of the facts and figures for those who wanted a lot of data. And I guess I would say, you know, I think that I would invite you to sign up for those meetings and do so repeatedly, because I am available. We've had some of those late into the night, into 10 p.m., 1 a.m. I'm available to share with you all the data that I have at my disposal. The institution has not kept good data, and I have been just as frustrated as you have been about getting data. So, Richard, when you say there's a wall, I'm not quite sure, and when you say the previous administration, you could see through, I actually would question that. I don't think you really knew how bad things were in the previous administration. I am telling you the truth. I believe in what's called satyagraha. In Sanskrit, it's called truth force. Truth is very painful, it's very difficult, and it gets people really pissed off at you. And I understand that, but I have told the truth about our budget and the truth about what's the illusion that this institution has been in for at least 20 years, if not more. And there are documents going back to 1971, 1969, that use almost the same language. It's unsustainable. What shall we do? Should we trash tuition? Shall we close down the engineering school? Some of these are public documents, okay? So my life is guided by this notion of satyagraha, okay? You think I enjoy all of this? But I will tell the truth, even if it results in attack, even if it bursts some bubbles. I'm sorry if I've burst any bubbles or illusions or myths. But as John Leeper has said, we cannot wish our way out of this. We simply cannot wish our way out of this. I invite you to come. I'll come to your office. I am always available to talk to people. I don't have a monopoly on good ideas. I welcome all the ideas, but we do need to figure out how to do this, because nothing else follows, as John said, if we cannot solve this. That doesn't mean that it's only a financial problem. No, it's principally a problem of advancing this as an extraordinary educational institution where the students are really first among equals of any institution that I know. So please sign up and come into my office, or invite me and I'll come to your offices. And I'll lay out all of the data as I am coming to understand it, because it's still being analyzed, still being analyzed. There were no historical records, really. We had to go back to these bound volumes, and I'm always willing to share. So please reach out. I am there, and I think that's the way in which we can communicate. And you know, with all due respect, sir, I have talked as the so-called hybrid framework has started to emerge, and the faculties have started to discuss it. I have briefed the ad chairs. Every 2 weeks who've been in my office have completely laid it open, and so there wasn't really you know, a communication through the media in that respect. The Senate has been briefed. Many of these bodies are elected bodies, and they are representative bodies, and I will always endeavor to do a better job communicating, and hope that we can find forums in which we can learn from each other. Thank you. Let's meet more often, is my answer. Let's meet more often so we can improve communication. Absolutely. I would be delighted to meet with the part-time people. I've started a new, hopefully, tradition of meeting with all the resident faculty, and hopefully we can do that every month and not just talk about some of these things, but get to know each other. And I would love to do the same with the part-time faculty, with the staff, with groups of alumni and other groups. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to give the panel
I understand that there were meetings about the strategy to create a grant program. However, reading the headlines in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal is that Cooper Union plans on charging tuition space for its graduate programs was the first time that that proposal became a strategy. It represents a fundamental shift where the larger community wasn't really included. That email came out exactly like the same day that.
8 minutes before.
Well, we could go back and forth on this. I'm not interested.
Anyone else want
The larger issue is that proposal of the grad program was published in the New York Times after it had been made clear in the Revenue Task Force that it was not a sustainable solution already. I just want to put it out there.
Also, I'm a Cooper Union student who's thinking about doing a master's in 2 years. I should be the first person to know so I can plan. Instead, I was the last person to know.
We have systems of elected representative government. We have student representatives. All the student representatives were briefed, and I would ask why the student body was not informed by the representatives. I would love to communicate with as large groups as possible, and as people.
We were protesting it for the past 2 weeks.
We're going to have to practice on this. But what I invite everyone to do is to take this conversation on and yes.
Just get it. There are 4 people left.
Okay, they're not.
Ask their questions.
Let them come to mind.
Could we just ask the directed questions, please? We've had a lot of discussion, and we can continue that discussion after the session. Yeah,
I'm just confused because I sense that there's a lot of miscommunication or no communication at all. And my question is that changing anytime soon? Because there's a lot of groups. I thought you guys were the Revenue Task Force. I apparently did not know what I was coming to. Like, that's my own fault. But the more I stand here, the more I realize that everyone's really smart, everyone's really passionate, but no one's talking to each other, and I really want to understand why that is. Like, why aren't you over there? You know, like, I'm confused, straight up. But like, why do I have to watch you guys, like, chalk it out right now? Like, why is that happening in front of me? You know?
Right.
Right, but I have to wait, like, I have to be talking this thing, and, like, this is not my style. Like, I can't talk like this. You know what I mean? Like, is there a plan for that? Like, communication stuff?
Yeah, I have similar concerns about, like, I'm also very confused about what's going on here. And I just want to come back to the earlier conversation in the open discussion with coming up with ideas that we can do yesterday. And Litia was talking about very specific things that can be about community building. And I really appreciate this idea of coming down instead of going up. And so then my question for that, so one idea, for example, is considering that this is a not-for-profit institution that's dedicated to education, the president and some of the people that work with him should not be making six-figure salaries in the school. Just to begin with that, that's easy. And I really appreciate Litia for bringing that up. And then also you had 5 excellent questions that had to do with transparency and also just addressing this need for doing this right now. Can we get some commitment right now from you, President, to do this tomorrow, to come out with all those documents and be transparent about the operational cost of the school, including your salary and all the salaries of everyone? Like, can we come out with a plan right now to do this tomorrow? That can come out tomorrow. And then just, I wanted to answer to the question of access, that who is this school for? I don't really have a clear idea. I mean, I understand that that's also something that needs to be revised, the mission of the school. But I'm an undocumented immigrant in this country, and had it not been for the tuition-free scholarship in this school, I would not have had an education. So that's what this school is for.
I just want to say that I really disagree with the idea that if we financially fail, there's nothing left. Really, this school is an ethical proposition. And I was wondering, I wanted to ask people who might know, if there was any historical precedent for institutions that were founded on an ethical proposition, and instead of violating or completely damaging their basic founding principles, they either went on hiatus or completely shut down.
Peter could probably do this a lot better than me, but I did want to say that there actually is a school that is free in New York City called the Society of Mechanics of New York, and Peter Cooper was on their board when it was founded. And he maybe even went there because it's older than Cooper Union. And it's on 47th Street, and it actually still maintains a full free program. And a friend of mine who's involved in high school education pointed that out to me recently, and he's visited them a number of times. They are a kind of ancient cousin of ours, you know.
Most private American colleges are founded on ethical basis. Most of them are religious. I think there's nothing more directly useful in a mission statement than if you're worshipping a particular form of God. And it's serious. I mean, if you've been to these colleges where they are, as it were, religiously tied in to the mission of the school, it's a fabulous place to be. If you're that way. Now, the trouble is with us, is that we were founded by a Unitarian who, who believed that the big danger facing the world was religion. So that's a mission statement of some kind, but of course what it gave to us was our original freedom. And the original freedom here is that no one ever asks us what religion we are when we come here. I mean, that is a superb freedom in the context of the 1850s, where you still had to be an Episcopalian, basically, to go to Columbia. And as you, but this is a kind of long story. I mean, the trouble with Cooper Union's history, and indeed the trouble with much of what Peter Cooper said, is it's pretty vague and, often issued from that high Unitarian prospect where, Emerson spoke and things like that. It's mysterious. But I think the mission statement we have is not bad. And whenever I'm asked a historical question, it's a problem. I think that what our mission statement is what it is in the present, and it is made by the people involved. I'd hate to be a kind of an original, someone who wished to find out exactly what...
To the panel and to the president, and forgive me, I get nervous. Early on in this discussion, the Martinez sisters, who are two of my most valuable peers, two of the most wonderful people I've ever known. Early on in the online discussion, they suggested that often in problems like this, people who are not in a position of power but have a voice are called upon to think about problems that they really don't have a lot of ability to interface with. And that is a position that, as someone without a lot of power, I'm a bit afraid to step into. So on the positive side, I'm very proud that we've put together the wiki, that we've put together these websites, we've put together the Cooper Union Entrepreneurial Society in these past couple of months. We've come together. So out of respect for all of the alumni's time and for your time, as someone who is in the position to push us forward in the direction that we all want to go in, I want to ask the panel and you if we can establish, and pardon me, I didn't say that very respectfully. I think I want to know if we can establish a trustworthy means of communication, and perhaps if maybe that's just the wiki that we've already set up, and if we can all begin to look at that gesture as what it should be. That's how the development office should interface with us. They should ask us what we think as they move forward on these. We've already come up with hundreds of ad campaigns. Hundreds of ways to reach out. So can we move forward with hope that these lines of communication that we've set up already are adequate? I guess is my question, and I think the answer is yes. And
when I was Secretary Treasurer of the Alumni Council, one of the things that we really struggled with was to remake the Alumni Association's website and to actually get to where all the features that are in the sites that you mentioned were in. And one of the things that I find particularly astounding, and I'm extremely and extraordinarily proud of us as a community, is that there's a bunch of people that just made all that happen immediately. And I think that is just really quite wonderful and extraordinary, and it just, I thought was really great. But one of the other things that occurred with that is that social media is a new way of communicating. And a lot of people aren't familiar with it. And because social media lets pretty much anybody say anything all the time, and then there are responses and the conversations occur, a lot of people focus on some of the extreme things or some of the shrill voices and think that embodies and speaks for the entire process. And I take a very different view, and that is that I think those shrill voices or those extreme views need to be put out there where everybody can see it and talk about it. And that one of the things that I notice is when some of those extreme things or radical things come out, or distasteful, or whatever you want to call it, that over time the responses mediate that and the conversation transforms. And so one of the things that I've noticed is I've taken part in that. And I haven't taken part in that on a regular basis, mostly because I don't understand it and I find it very confusing because I'm a 60-year-old geezer. But one of the things that I've noticed is that there's been a lot of really great things that have come out of that. So part of the answer to your question is that I think the unfamiliarity of it as a process and as a means is something that will change over time as it gets used more often.
Thank you. I just really hope that we can communicate better.
Marco? Yeah. Thank you. I welcome that, and the answer, yes, is of course. As I hear members of the panel speak, and as I read some things online, there are many, many cases when I feel, yes, there is miscommunication, and that if we sit around a table, sometimes it might take 3 hours. We may not agree at the end of that, but we actually do get closer in terms of understanding the premises upon which we base things. And so there is a lot of miscommunication. I think there's certainly, I need to understand you all better. There are things that I believe you need to understand me better a little bit more. And I think it's two ways. And so I certainly put myself out there to spend as much time, and I pledge this as you can stand, to continue to try to communicate and clear up misunderstandings. I do think that there is a question of tone and civil discourse, and I really hope as we move forward that we can enter a space of dialogue, of conversation, where no idea, however threatening, however painful, however difficult, is unworthy of discussion. And where we can, somebody can say something that might be radical or something like that, otherwise upsetting, and we ought to be able to, as an educational institution, have that conversation in a fairly civil way, and I think that this panel certainly has exemplified that, so thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Some of you may know me, some of you may know what I've been doing for the school for many years, publicly, behind the scenes. And I wasn't going to come up and ask a question or make a statement because I think there's a lot of smart people in this room. And thank you very much, President Armstead, for actually coming tonight as well. But I felt compelled after I heard about some statements that were made that I actually want to come up and just put some beef on the table and noodle over it. 2 points. Pardon me? My name is Rob Morano, EE93. I serve on the Cooper Union Alumni Association, and I, along with Dean Benevy, founded the Entrepreneur Society. And 2 points, one on alumni giving and one on sustainability. And I run my own company. This is my 5th startup. The reason why many of you may not have seen me around is I'm actually raising my own funds right now. I've raised $15 million, and I'm about to raise another probably 5 to 8. However, my board had asked me, it's about time we actually made some cuts. Because when we're trying to make ourselves attractive, we actually have to be lean. I was asked to cut 25% out of my company. That means I had to lay off 7 people, and I did. It hurt, but I did, because I want my company to survive. So I did it. So my analogy here is we're at a very tenuous, troublesome time in our history, and we do live in a city where the disparity in wealth is great, and there is a moral obligation for those who have to help those who have not. Well, I come from a tradition growing up in the Catholic Church where we had ostensibly the larger institution to help, but I don't know if anyone is a Catholic here or not, but Mother Church doesn't help the little churches on average. And in the church that I grew up with, we actually had to raise our own money in a working class neighborhood in Queens. Church didn't give us money. We used the products of work ethic, pick ourselves up by the bootstrap. And my analogies here are really to merge the ability to raise money, the ability of the alumni to come to the rescue, and the ability of the administration to make those tough decisions, to take out as much as we can, because we have to live within our means, period. We all live, and I feel sorry for you all as young adults. I'm in my 40s, I'm going to try to pick myself up on my bootstraps. But you don't remember what it was like in the big boom days, the 70s and 80s, and in the 90s, where we're actually paying for that right now. So living in our means means we all have to help, all of us. I challenge each and every one of you to go home and say, Mom and Dad, can you give $500, $1,000 to a union? I challenge President Jamshed and your administration to not take the scalpel out, to take the hatchet and hatchet out what we have in this organization that we don't necessarily need, to do one thing, and that's to educate you all. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm one of those adjuncts, like so many of you, who don't come here to get paid. We come here for you. We come here to take what we've learned and give back. We can't rely on Bloomberg. We can't rely on Larry Ellison. Yet, we rely on ourselves. So I challenge that panel. I challenge you, your organization, and the board that you represent as well, because I'm a board member on my company. I know the pressure. I feel for you. I really do. I know what's going on in your mind. And I know what's going on in your mind for everyone else. It's not a laughing matter, because there's people's lives involved, especially ours. I challenge you all. Take the hatchet out. Get everyone to give $1. Who here is representing the senior class? Your gift, I commend you. There's at least a dozen alum that I know, including myself, said, you want money? I'll help. Reach out. I challenge your families, for all of us, alumni first, to come to the rescue. Demonstrate that we can actually try to help ourselves. And I know, God help us, I know we'll get through this. But it starts with us. No one else. No one outside, not Bloomberg, but us. Every one of us. I challenge you all. And I will be part of that solution, and I'm going to disappear at the corner. Thank you.
Thank you.